All right, Tracy, good morning, everyone. Welcome to our meeting for today. Tracy, would you call the roll, please?
Yes. Commissioner Askoff,
Present.
Commissioner Bonfiglio,
Present.
Commissioner Cos,
Present.
Commissioner Lucibella,
Present.
and Mayor Pugh.
Here. All right, let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, the first order here, we're going to have a closed executive session. We'll ask that those in attendance will include the town commission, town attorney, town manager, and police chief.
Do you want to hold your session in here or in the other room? It's up to you.
We can, I don't mind holding it in here.
We probably would be better to hold it in the conference room.
Conference room? That's where we usually do it. All right, so we'll adjourn to the conference room. Conference room. Up, down, up, down. Good exercise. Okay. Oh, that's a 6.
Jamie, did they get, have they seen your recommendations? Yeah. There is. Thank you. Thanks. What'd you get?
Hmm?
What did you get?
Town manager emailed it. Town manager gave it to me. Emailed it. Chief, you ready? Tracy, you ready? Welcome, everyone. We'd like to reopen the town commission meeting for an open session for recommend the town employee insurance package. Jamie, take a start out.
Thank you, Mayor. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
In your package behind tab number 2 is the insurance program recommendations. I won't read it verbatim, other than to tell you that in the process of looking at the town insurance offerings that have been provided very generously from this commission to our employees, over the past 10 months that I've been here, we've been looking at issues of coverage and cost and benefits for those programs. And we talked to our current provider as well as sought bids from other providers and talked to, in the process, several different companies that represent the major insurance companies and vetted through more than 55 individual insurance plans and weighed out the benefits and costs of each. In your backup, behind my cover memo, there is a simple chart that shows the basically 5 top contenders that emerged from that process in terms of the plan offerings, including our current plan, its renewal, 4 total plans because those are our current plans shown in our renewal, plus 3 other company offerings. After vetting through all the information, spending a great amount of time both internally with staff and externally with vendors going through the various options. Town administration weighed the offerings out, and we are making a recommendation to you that a particular plan that is offered by Blue Cross Blue Shield, which is an HMO plan called BCBS 14251, which is for identification purposes, along with all the supplemental insurance coverages that the town also already offers in one form or another, be considered to replace the current neighborhood health partnership plan, which is a division of United Healthcare. And one note on that recommendation is that currently the HRA card system, which prepays deductibles, would not continue under the new plan recommendation because the deductible is significantly lower. And also, in a few of the plans that we showed you in the final short list, There's also the option of gap insurance to cover some of those deductibles. That would not be included in our recommended plan either. Other than adjustment for the 2017 rates, the October 1 renewal rates, the comparative cost is very similar to what we currently have under the renewal scenario versus the proposed HMO and its coupled offerings. The actual plan content is in your book, the 14,251 HMO Blue Care Plan, and then the additional coverages are listed behind that. It is our recommendation for the town to authorize switching from the current plan provider, which is the Neighborhood Health Plan, again by United Healthcare, to the Blue Cross Blue Shield 14,251 plan.
That's the platinum plan? That's the platinum plan, right? Not the gold, not the silver, it's the top of the line HMO plan? Okay, tell him that. Go ahead.
Yes.
No, I was talking to you. Go ahead.
I was looking quickly to see if it was labeled as platinum on the plan cover, but it is, it's a comprehensive plan with an extremely low initial deductible and then a co-pay system versus a high, the current system that we utilize. We did present a comprehensive body of all these plans at the last commission meeting for comparative purposes, and then that's been shortlisted to this list and this recommendation. So with that, I'd be happy to try to answer any questions or let the commission discuss, or if you'd like to hear from anybody on that.
All right, so that's your presentation of the plans. You're suggesting we go with the proposed Blue Cross Blue Shield 14251 with
Yes.
Eversure?
And you'll see on that chart the associated costs for the base health plan and then the individual premiums for the additional sub or coupled insurances for vision, life, accidental death and dismemberment, long-term, short-term coverages, disability coverages, which are all the categorical areas that we offer today.
Okay.
And just one question. You mentioned gap insurance.
Yes.
Whose responsibility is gap insurance if somebody so chooses it?
We, under the recommended plan, we would not currently recommend to include gap insurance. If one of the other plans that we had shown, which are variations of Blue Cross Blue Shield plans, we included the cost of gap insurance because they're higher deductible plans and it would offset those costs.
So
We're
we
trying to
don't-
keep the entire package somewhat revenue or cost neutral to both the town and the employees to the degree that's possible.
I have,
Do you want to do public comment first? Public comment? Okay, hearing none, commit back to the commission.
I've indicated to the town manager that the most important thing that he brings to the commission is credibility of information. It's important that we have accurate information. And I'm not nitpicking, but the information isn't exactly accurate because you're at $712.50, but you also have to pay 50% of the 200. You also have to pay another $12.50 per month in terms of covering 50% of the deductible. So you're really at $725 versus $714. Okay.
You mean 7/12/20?
See the $712.20, you need to add about $12.50 to that because we need
Okay.
to pick up 50% of their deductible. We were doing that with Neighborhood Health Plan, with the health card, with the gap coverage, if you will. So it's not a huge amount,
What's
but
that total again?
it's $725 roughly. Not major, but it needs to be taken into account. And in fact, in fairness to the town manager, you're not going to pay $125 for each employee because some of them may not hit their deductible during the year.
How many employees have opted for this plan? Or how many employees we have in the insurance plan now?
27, 23 are enrolled, 23.
23?
Will that grow? You expect?
I expect
I
to
would
grow a
hope it
couple
will.
of people, I believe so. If,
Rick, are we already paying that 7 and change as part of the current plan?
Paying that, yes,
Okay.
because the current
But
plan
is
has
it-
the HRA card.
The
Oh,
HRA
so that's
piece.
got, okay,
You see what I'm saying?
because I just want to
Yeah,
compare apples to apples.
that's exactly why I said it.
Okay.
Now
And-
you're comparing apples to apples.
Okay, because that, I mean, without that increase, 712.20 is like a 3.5% increase.
They're still
With the
same
increase,
price.
yeah,
You're still.
yeah, so there's, yeah.
Where it's gonna cost you more for the town is that you will have greater enrollment, I believe, but I think that that's a good thing. It's
Okay.
something that we'd like to see.
Okay.
So,
So
need
anybody
a
like to
motion?
make a motion?
I'll move that we approve switching to a new insurance plan, the one presented by Evershore Gloria Rosen from Blue Cross Blue Shield, number BCBS-14251, along with matched supplemental coverages for dental, vision, life, LTD, and STD, but not HRA card or gap insurance.
I'll second.
A second.
Mr.
Any
Mayor,
other discussion? Glenn?
and does that motion include authorizing the town manager to sign any appropriate forms or contracts with the agent of record and/or the carrier?
I will amend to authorize the town manager to sign all the appropriate insurance forms necessary to implement coverage according to that plan.
You amend your second?
Amend. Second, I need a second on the
I
amendment?
second.
Thank you.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. All right, moving on to our consideration of the fiscal year 16-17 proposed budget. All right, Jamie?
Okay, thank you, Mayor. I'll just take a moment or two to give you an overview, and then however you'd like to move through the budget document, we can certainly do that. Behind tab 3 in your book is the tentative town budget workshop version, or workbook version 3.0. We've used a consistent publication format here, and version 3.0, which is in your book and online, replaces all previous versions. It is a living, moving draft document, and as particular things come into play between now and the actual public budget hearings in September.
Excuse me, Tracy, I don't have that booklet.
Which one do you have?
3.0.
I have version 1.0.
Is it in your?
It's in your,
package?
it's actually in your package today, the,
Under tab
under
3?
tab 3.
Under tab 3?
You want me to shake it up and down? I don't have it.
All right.
Thank you.
Oh, your 3's empty.
Yeah, 3's empty.
See, not only do they take your garbage can away, but they don't give you.
They take my garbage can away. I mean,
You don't get the
You
budget
know what it
back.
is?
or
It's
you
Cut
get-
our printing
hold
costs
on,
by
it's
20%.
It was in number 2. Here you go.
You get no respect.
Oh,
So in other words, they hid it from you.
They hid it.
Oh,
Okay,
I'm sorry, is it under the wrong tab?
I got it now.
Okay.
Craig, proceed, please.
The cover should read Workbook V 3.0.
Got it.
Okay.
I gotta change all my notes from workbook 1.0.
I'll just flip through, past the title pages. There's for those who are following and looking in your books, there is a town staff flow chart initially, then there's just a cover letter from me. There is a certification of taxable value, which includes our gross ad valorem assessed value. And the current, I would remind you that at the maximum millage setting rate, you all voted to set the maximum millage at 5.35, the current flat rate, the rollback rate being 4.9891. The following page is a brief millage chart. The green line on that page indicates the cost at 5.35, or the revenues generated, which for public edification is budgeted at 97%. 95% is the lowest permitted, and there's a couple of other tiers there to indicate the amounts of revenues that would generate. Then just structurally through the book, you have a revenues chart on page 1 and 2, capital investment fund on page 3. On page 4, you have revenues versus expenditures. And then, starting on page 5, we go through departmentally. There is a page for the breakdown of governmental expenses by department, including salaries, benefits, and then individual operational costs. Finally, when we get to the ends of the departments, there on page 17, there is a 5-year capital investment plan worksheet. And that's to list items that have been talked about but that have not been committed to yet, and also to look at the idea of starting to project out 5 or more years the amounts of money that the town would earmark or dedicate to specific kinds of projects on a amortized basis moving forward. And then the final page of the budget book is a HR chart of all the town employees, and it's a remuneration table worksheet for what they are, who they are, what their positions are, adjustments that still need to be made in this fiscal year in order to meet whatever criteria or contracts, and then an adjusted salary aggregate going forward. And then the final 2 columns on that particular chart show ranges from 2 to 5% of what the impacts would be to the town budget should all the various merit-based evaluations be deployed along the way in the year. Maximum budgeting, I might remind. We have to budget for maximum. It would be technically something a little less than that, presuming that not everybody would ultimately end up at the highest level. Just one other reading note of the chart. Each page represents the actual fiscal year 2015 ending numbers based on audited numbers, the budgeted numbers that were shown in the current year budget, which was passed last October, which is fiscal year 2016.
Beginning of year? So it's the
October
beginning of
1 to date, yeah. Well, actually, the whole budget, and then the third column is fiscal year 16, current year, year to date.
Page 5?
I'm on page 5, but the headings apply to all the same pages.
Okay, so the fiscal year 2016 budget, those are the amounts from October of last year.
Yes, so those are the numbers that you approved just prior to my arrival in October 1, or actually September of this past fall. The third column is the FY16 actuarials in our accounting software at 10 months. And we have to be reconciled and accounted before we can run those numbers. That's why that's at 10 months, because it ended at July 31st. The fourth column is a fiscal year, year-to-date percentage of the budget it's working against. And then FY17 budget, the second to last column, which is bold-faced in your books, is the projection based on the previous year budgets, the current budget, where we are in quote, the burn rate, and then other calculations and strategies that we have placed into the FY17 projected budget. And then finally, the final column there is the percent to FY16 budget. In other words, if that number is 100%, that line item is the same between 16 and 17. If it's something over 100%, it is an increase. If it's something under 100%, it is a decrease. On some of the pages, you'll see full-time equivalent supplemental information for the number of employees involved in that particular department. And then finally, I would mention that back on page 4, for example, in order to project at this point in time, a balanced budget as required by law when we finally adopt the budget, I have transfers to capital projects at the bottom of the expenditure column, and that's the differential in this particular case between the revenues anticipated and the expenses anticipated. And so we've earmarked that differential to capital project funding at this point in time. There are other things that will move based on a couple of factors. One is that working under the budget, the current FY16 budget that I've inherited, we are still vetting through on a daily and regular basis all the legacy systems and all the legacy contracts that exist in the town. And in the past, when times were tight, I think the trend in the town was to write multi-year contracts in many areas, which are still coming up in rotation on a regular basis, and especially in the areas of law enforcement, for example. The chief and I are working very closely to look at those contracts, to look at those service agreements, to look at the things that are coming up in rotation. And in the FY17 budget versus the FY18 budget, I think you'll see some significant changes as we attempt to change out legacy systems as well as service agreements and other factors to make more efficient and more cost-effective some of those relationships that we are somewhat locked into at this time. Overall speaking, and then I will turn it over to you for all your questions and procedures. This is a bridge budget. It gets us from where we are currently to the new year. And I think we will make some significant innovation forward as we move through this coming fiscal year to address a number of these items. I just wanted to make one comment. I was at a conference on Friday, and I happened to spend some time with some of our town vendors. And, for example, our financial software vendor, to learn that our software system, which has certain challenges for us, is a legacy system of example that actually has not been updated in 3 years from the vendor that created it. They do still tech support it, but that's because they have customer bases in the field. So each and every contract, each and every relationship we have with these systems and services that we contract for are being vetted and weighed to improve in the future as soon as we can get that opportunity to move past the current contractual relationship. And with that, I will entertain discussions, questions, comments, however you'd like to move forward.
Well, let's start right at the top. First page. Are there any questions on the statement of revenues? None?
What is on the second page of that, fund balance unappropriated, Department 380?
$286,600?
Yep.
That's the number in the current budget. We reduced that to the 260 in the projected budget.
But what is unappropriated? I don't,
Those are, unappropriated funds are funds that are budgeted for currently, but may not actually be expended at the end of the year, and would end up becoming returned to the town automatically at the end of the fiscal year if unexpended.
okay.
It's a estimated number because that number continually moves and then is finally adjusted by the auditors at the point in time that they, quote, true everything up.
Good enough. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to the next page, statement of revenues.
What is the 95,842 interfund transfer, Jamie, do you know?
I'm sorry,
Statement of revenues, I'm looking at page 3.
I got 180.
Yeah, 95,842.
the 180 is the,
Yeah, that's contingency and,
that's money that's already, the 180 is money that already resides in the capital fund
okay,
currently, that's
Okay.
unexpended, but is earmarked for capital fund projects
Okay.
only. The 95,842 is the amount that
Plug
we
number.
anticipate
Okay.
would come in from this year's, or from the new year budget for that purpose as
That
well.
we haven't spent yet.
So aggregated, that's 275,942 funds that would reside specifically in the capital fund for the purpose of funding capital projects. And where that's relative to my earlier comment is when we get back to the end of the book where we're talking about 5-year capital investment plans, by commission direction, you could direct portions of that money to those specific parts and pieces of the capital plan to get specific things done. For example, just for discussion, at roughly $100,000 a mile, to repave, resurface roads. If we went through the town and we have 16.2, I think it is, but I'm not sure that exact number, of lane miles that we're responsible for, at 100,000, that would be 1.6 million over time, and you might earmark a piece of that paving each year to get back on our road paving program, or we might appropriate it for any other project that is of your direction.
Okay. All right, moving on, page 4.
I'll jump in if nobody has any questions.
I noticed the commission went up. Is that just due to the insurance?
That, I believe that's the only thing that raised on the town commission section. If you look at page 5, which happens to be the commission page next door, the only increased line item is the insurance for liability hazard damage, and that includes all your D&O insurance and everything. And we have had actuarial changes in that due to history and past events, so that number is up, the quote to us from that provider.
Okay. I think that on this page, there's an inadvertent error, but it's a important one.
Which one?
You're going to find that in the 2016 budget, last year's budget, the contingency, you see contingency and interfund transfers down the bottom there?
Yep.
It was not 2017, it was 230,000. And you see the town clerk at 355,469? What we passed last year was 342,468. You're looking at a $13,000 difference that the town manager inadvertently picked up. It was the payment to Karen, the $13,000 that we gave to Karen. But it becomes very, very important because we then carry that $355,000 number over to the clerk's department as a comparative. And so if you turn to page 7, on page 7, it says that 2016 was 355,469. It wasn't. It was 342,468, $13,000 less. And it's important when you start to compare and you say, hey, we're doing a great job there. We're only spending 93% of last year's budget. So you take the 13,000 off. Then you realize in your head, this shouldn't be on paper, but in your head, we dropped the salary of our town clerk from 91.7 to 65.5. And what that gives you is 13,000 plus 26,000 that you need to take off to compare apples to apples how much that budget is going up. And when you do that, you realize that the clerk's budget is going up by 8.6%, which I apologize for jumping, but you needed to understand that. And then you ask, why is the clerk's budget going up by 8.9%? And I have only 2 questions. Why is accounting and auditing going from 30 to 39.5?
Because we are recommending that we have some additional accounting services that have to do with arm's length and auditing transactions, so that we're doing that function properly in the audit process of the town.
Okay, but you didn't say that in a narrative. Let me ask a second question. What is the 9,600 other contractual services?
I put that in there to allow for updates on software and or other tech support, basically, to the clerking functions, the
Okay.
administrative functions of the front of the house.
Okay, I put you back to page 4 and return you to your normal program with these comments.
Can I make one comment?
By all means, by all means.
I just wanted to point out that the lump sum increase that you are referencing for the town clerk is shown on its own line item in that, so you can back those numbers out easily.
Agreed.
One more time with that, what?
The lump sum payments that were made to the previous town clerk and in fact, the previous town manager are shown, they're broken out on the pages.
Correct, but we didn't budget at 355,469. You can't compare to 355,469 because you're adding in one-time end of year, never to be seen again, hopefully, charges, and you come out with, hey, we're doing great in that department, when in fact you're increasing that department apples to apples, almost 9%. here's my point on that little money trail. The point of a budget is transparency. There are a whole lot, especially for the public, because I spent 2 days with this, and I get to come to the meeting, but a lot of the public doesn't get to come to the meeting, and they should be able to pick up a budget and get a feel for how we're spending their money differently this year than last year, rather than having to ferret it out. And to that end, what you've seen in our past budgets, Jamie, is a summary. They give us discussion of major expenses. They've given us a discussion of capital expenditures. They've given us an expense summary. They give us a wonderful 4-year comparative chart by department. And lastly, they give us for each one of these pages a detail of personal services and capital outlays. Here we just get capital outlays per department, and so we get to play, okay, what's the secret? Tell us what this is for. This is going to be a very long meeting as a result. We've got an 18-page budget down from 45, roughly 45 pages in past. So we've really shrunk the budget, and we really impacted transparency of this process, especially for the public. It's going to be very transparent for me, because I'll stay here as long as it needs to understand this, because that's my job, but I don't understand this from here. And we will go through it page by page, and I'll get my answers.
May I make one comment, Commissioner?
Of course.
I would just suggest to you the reason the narrative is not written in the multi-year comparisons aren't included is because those are intended for the public hearings. This meeting was intended as a workshop to garner from this commission any priorities or direction that might fundamentally change the content of this, so that when I write that narrative and I present all that additional material, it will be the final package
Well,
for your
Jamie,
consideration.
I'm going to have to take exception to that, because you're putting us in a position here of approving things that should be coming through the commission. We have to find them first, so that you're going to hire an outside, you're going to increase the auditing function simply by virtue of us approving this budget. Well, you put it in the budget. You don't need our help after that. So we always receive that in advance of this meeting. We receive the narratives in advance of this meeting, as we should, because just like the public, we shouldn't have to spend 2 days. We should be spending 2 hours with the budget to really fully understand it. Come in with, our budget meetings are quick normally. We come in, 5 or 6 questions, we hash a few things around, and we're out in 45 minutes. This does not lend itself to that process, and I would suggest that creating a narrative after the fact is a little bit after the horse is out of the barn.
All right,
One-
so,
If I could just comment, just for clarification only. As I've suggested from the first time we've done this format of the budget, the numbers that are generated in these charts are drawn from our accounting of the town. So they represent real transactions in the town. Where there are new numbers introduced, they show only in the new column, obviously.
Of course, yes.
And, it's my intention to explain any and all of those to you as you ask about them.
Okay,
and
well, see,
write the narrative.
right, but see, his point, to Rich's point, new numbers, I mean, I don't want to jump around, because I'd like to start right at the town manager and keep going through there, but to Rich's point, a $9,600 software budget would be nice to have a little line item and saying, or an asterisk on there, and an asterisk down at the bottom, this is for this. So I don't have to ask you, and then you don't have to explain it. So I mean, I don't mind sitting home on my kitchen table and going through this. I'd rather be doing that than spending 4 or 5 hours up here going through it, when at least there's some kind of explanation. I don't have to ask. I shouldn't have to ask the question, what a $9,600 payment or expenditure here is, then say, okay, what is this? And then what is this? It shouldn't, or it should already be listed so I can understand it, so that I understand the budget before coming here and having to ask. I shouldn't have to ask you how you're spending my money. You should be telling me how I should be spending my money. I mean, not telling me, but you should be explaining to me how this money is being spent. That's all. All right, so having said that, let's go to town manager. We're on page 6. And let's start there. So, anybody have any questions on the town manager? I do. Let's see here. This travel and per diem, we're up to 232.3% greater, or $3,200. Is there a breakdown for that? And because I know, if you've done all that, everything you traveled last year, we should know, or you should know pretty much exactly how much that would be coming up this year. So why are we going up another $200? Are you
talking about the FY '17 projection number there?
Yeah,
$3,200?
1,400 to
Yes.
3,200, 246%.
Well, first of all, the 1,300 number was budgeted prior to my arrival here.
Well, I understand that.
When you hired me, you contractually indicated a number of things that I was allowed to attend, and that represents the numbers that are in the FY '16 year-to-date number. And based on those official events, the $3,200 number is an estimated cost to attend those 4 or 5 events a year, and the associated travel costs that are associated with attending them. So that budgetary number went way up over what had previously been in 16 and 15, because my predecessor did not participate in a number of those things.
Mayor, you stole fire from me on this, because I want to stick with that. If I can
Go ahead.
follow
No,
up.
I just,
Wouldn't you normally, when you create a budget for the sake of the commission and the public, itemize those things, list those things when you do a budget? Wouldn't you normally put that in a budget?
Well, this is a summary budget that you have before you. Again, it's based on the actual GL codes of the town and where we spend all the money. We have detail, for example, police department, I've got.
Okay, so
the
you
chief
wouldn't
has-
normally detail those if you, is what
Right,
you're saying.
this is a summary line item budget at this point in the process.
Well, why is it that the summary line item budget for the town of Melbourne Beach shows exactly what those items are? In fact, there's a $2.5 million budget, half the size of ours. It's almost 70 pages long. You detailed them last year. Why would you
I
make
did.
us have to go and search this out? Jamie, this is summary budget. This is not working papers. Why wouldn't we get a document why wouldn't our town get a document that's something a little bit more like this, rather than 18 pages of summary?
how many pages?
It's unacceptable.
The,
Here you go, $2.5 million versus 6. It's unacceptable.
the difference, to address your question, the document you're showing the mayor there was produced under different requirements, and it was produced over a series of about 20, give or take, workshops and meetings to get to that document.
But it still contained the detail that we could understand what travel and subscription and membership and education. I mean, you, as he said, you had to know these things to come up with a number of 3,200.
We
Let
do,
us know what
and-
you know.
We can. I have a lot of that here in terms of the actuarials, and we can produce all the detail that you'd like for every line item. I can produce that type of
And that's not my
document for you.
argument. That's not, I know you can. I trust the number is right. My point is for purposes of this meeting, to avoid this discomfort that I'm feeling and that I'm sure you're feeling, give us the information. That's all. Give us the information, not every single bit, but give us the breakdowns, much like you did in your former job.
My biggest, when I look at this, I look at the percent to fiscal year 16. I look at the percentages. When you've got a percentage of 246.2, and then on the bottom, the subscriptions, membership, education, 260%, that's what, then I go back to the left and start reading. And that's, to me, would be something I would presume that you would look at to say, hey, look, I should explain this huge increase because it's going to be asked. That's all, rather than me have to ask, like, okay, we went from, is any of this subscriptions, memberships, education in the travel and per diem budget? I mean, because literally you've gone from, the old manager had $500 we had in the thing, from $1,200 you spent, now we're jacking it up to $1,300. I'm just wondering
Those are actually membership dues, the majority of
Okay.
that number.
to,
And it's separate from the travel and per diem to attend official
Well, the
events.
former
I'm
town
just
manager
saying,
and town
just
clerk
looking
would have
at it.
said it's too much in membership dues and too much in travel for them. Now, I understand that you had an agreement, that year is coming to a close, and so we can always talk about the amount of travel in that agreement. But personally, I think that for what has served us so well, a 250% increase is a bit much unless you can find it somewhere else in your budget. It's a bit much. I could see going up to 2,000 and 1,000, but we need to, this is $6 million of taxpayers' money. We need to respond to them.
okay, so basically, since it's the workshop, you can see, we're gonna need some kind of breakdown on the
Well,
travel
actually,
and per diem.
you could make it simpler, just go through the entire budget, and whenever there's a notable FY17 proposed increase, just asterisk that item.
And all
Because we're gonna
capital
have the exact same
expenditures.
thing on the town clerk.
We're moving
We're
it,
gonna have
well,
the exact same thing on administration, we're gonna have the exact same thing on the various memberships.
And all capital expenditures, because you'll see in each of these machinery and equipment and like that, goes up to $3,900 in the clerk's office from $500. It's reasonable to assume that the public or the commission is gonna say, why did that jump up so much?
So just so we can have a easier next meeting, is this format compatible with everyone with asterisks breaking out the overtures?
The details where there's a change in percentage.
oh yeah, of course, because
Yes.
let's face it, anything over 100%
You
is,
look at-
I'm
you
gonna
can
ask a
look at it.
question. I mean, looking right at it, I mean, going down, 110, let's move on. If you want, any more questions on the town
Well, you
manager?
could, no,
Let's go to the town clerk. I mean, we start out right off the bat, I got 131.7% increase in the accounting and auditing. And what is that for now?
Well, it's renewal of the current auditor contract, which is the bulk of that, plus monies for a CPA tech support in the audit field for the degree of separation between the auditor and the functions of the clerk's office.
Okay, so the town of Ocean Ridge ever had that before?
No, and you have not been doing it correctly before. That's my concern here.
what do you mean by
is
correctly?
There are government accounting standards that require arm's length separation between functions in the town, and we are trying to correct those procedures. And we're using a former auditor / CPA consultant, if this is passed, to do that on an ongoing basis.
Why didn't we see an exception in our audit? Our audits are designed to look at procedures in addition to numbers. Why didn't we get dinged on the audit for that?
Because, well, I can only speculate on that. Our auditors have been with us. They are very familiar with our system and how it works, and they've not had serious concern because of the size and scope of our town as to how some of those procedures were done. But they've suggested that correctly they should be done differently under ideal situations.
Can I get a letter to that effect? Or a phone call
I can
from them
request,
either way?
I could certainly request that.
I'd like to know what goes into that. As I said, we saved money because Karen retired, and that shouldn't be thought of as like part of the new budget. You know, that's money that goes back to the taxpayers. We have that $13,000 issue, and so what we have is a budget that apples to apples has actually not gone down 8.4, it's going up 8.6. Why is the town clerk budgeted at $74,000 with a $65,500 salary?
I would refer to your employee chart on the back, which just shows where people are today, where they might be adjusted to for successful evaluations and/or other contractual adjustments in the case of police side, and then a range of merit for the coming fiscal year if it, so I've maxed some, let me just find the line item for for you.
Well, let me jump right in. You have 3 of your employees that you have highlighted as due for an increase adjustment on merit evaluation. That would be the lieutenant, Hal, and the clerk. Those 3, not the girls at the front desk, not the dispatchers. These 3, Jamie. Now,
These are based on data hire and
no, it
annualized.
says, no, this is not date of hire. This is increase adjustment on evaluation merit, dark green, dark green, dark green, okay? Now, you couldn't have possibly done the evaluation yet, especially in the case of the clerk, because she hasn't even been here for a year, okay? And yet, you already have it in your mind that those 3 people are going to get merit raises, but nobody else is going to get merit raises. I don't understand how you do that before an evaluation, and why it would be just those 3, and why we've got a town clerk's salary jumping from $65,500, which was $8,000 above what we had budgeted, I remind you, to potentially $74,000. She's not even been with us a year. And she'll have not been with us for 2 years by the time this budget is over. How do we get to that number? How do we get from 65 to possibly get 15% up?
Under the scenario I gave you in this chart, it assumes the possibility of up to a 5% merit raise at anniversary and assumes potentially another 5% maximum for all employees at the final column.
That only gets her to 72. You still budgeted 74, and the question still remains, why are only 3 employees targeted as potentially getting a merit pay increase? You'd need a crystal ball to be able to do that.
Actually, there's a number of,
No, there's a number based on new year, administrative change for performance, anniversary, but this is an increase adjustment based on merit evaluation, based on evaluation. It's a merit pay increase. It's an increase outside of anniversary. That's the point of it. And you've got 3 people that you have targeted that you've said, okay, they're likely to get a 5% merit or whatever percent merit pay increase, and I'm wondering how you divine that in advance, just for those 3 and not for anybody else.
it is my projection based on observational performance of those employees, why I positioned them in that category in the budget.
And
It has not been,
not Jean, not Lisa, not any of your other employees. Those are the only 3 that you picture are doing well enough to.
no, not at all. Every employee is eligible.
Those are the only
based on-
3 that are shown in dark green, meaning evaluation merit pay raise.
In the case of the I'm just looking at which ones are highlighted, 'cause I wasn't seeing the highlight. The lieutenant, there is,
And I'm sorry, maybe it was lieutenant.
I have a chief, lieutenant, and the clerk earmarked for
That's correct. The
merit
chief, the
evaluation.
lieutenant, and the clerk. I agree. We all see that. The question is why? The question is why just those 3? Why nobody else? And why them at all? That's the question.
Well, again, because they've been projected observationally to be eligible for that increase based on merit, and so if they get it on the merit evaluation, that would adjust those salaries for calculations moving forward. And then applying the range of merit evaluations for the full fiscal year would then bump any one of these employees, including the other ones on the list, up that additional tier.
Must do wonders for morale of the staff. That's all I can say. Wonders.
Well, no, wait,
No.
let me expand on that a little bit. If the point here is to put the merit increase into the budget so it's covered under the budget, because you make the budget the max amount that you're likely to spend. To Rich's point, again, so the rest of these employees aren't eligible for merit raises for the fiscal year 17?
They're all eligible. It's that different employees, some have anniversary date adjustments that are occurring.
But when I talk,
Some
when I
have,
talk about, I'm talking about merit raise evaluations, exactly what Rich's point is, because I'm thinking the same thing. If you're going to max the budget out for merit pay increases, would you not do it for everyone who's involved? As a budget, when you do a budget, you do the max, so what you're saying on this worksheet is that these three people, whether they deserve it or not, are the only ones who are you're putting in the budget who are slated to maybe get that maximum amount. So that would lead me to the next assumption that none of the rest of the folks are going to be put in the budget for that merit increase.
in many cases, the employees that are already listed in FY16 have already had those adjustments made to their particular station.
I think you're talking about anniversary adjustments. Isn't a merit?
Anniversary
evaluation-
and/or PBA.
Okay,
Yeah, but a merit-
Isn't a merit, you just said you have the town clerk budgeted for a merit pay increase based on observation plus an anniversary, and I'll ask the question that I asked before, that the mayor asked again, why isn't anybody but those three getting the potential of a double bump this year? And why is it even at max, 72,000 from 65? Why did we put 74,000 in the budget?
Yeah, that was my next question.
I will look at the detail of that line item and get it for you, so that I can show you.
I mean, if the point of a budget is to make sure we have enough money at the end of the year to pay for all the anticipated expenses, and this was something that you didn't want to pay extra budget, during the year, why wouldn't you just say everybody merit increase, whatever that number is, so that it's in a budget? We don't necessarily have to spend it, but it's budgeted, and in case those folks get zero or something in between or the max, we have it in the budget so that we don't have to
Because you'd
pull
have to
from a
raise the
general
millage
fund.
rate. Because you'd have to raise the millage rate, I think, if you did it. And
Well,
so the
but-
question
but
is,
the
why
point
is
that-
anybody in there?
Well, that's
the point.
That's exactly.
That's the point. I mean, if your goal
That's
is
the point
to.
we're trying to make. It's like,
Yeah,
wait a minute.
If your goal is to cover these expenses just in case they earn the max, then you would do it for everybody. If, on the other hand, you just plan to pull it out of a general fund as an additional expense in the year, then don't put anybody in there.
Exactly,
Right.
exactly.
See, the thing is, the only reason one of the reasons I question it the most is that I can understand people have gotten their merit raises before this budget goes into effect, so it wouldn't be everybody, but it would be,
Right.
I would certainly presume that it would be more than just these three.
At
That's
the
all I'm
point
saying.
of creating this chart, these are the people that are being considered. You're correct, Mayor, that most of these salaries have already been adjusted in the current fiscal year.
Not with
either
merit
by
pay increases.
contract. Well, merit pay increase is a new emerging field that's related also to our collective bargaining scenario, that everybody will be looked at through that lens after the fact. As Commissioner Bonfiglio pointed out here, this document anticipates if this is to occur and this is the maximum increase or exposure that would occur, this would be the number that represents, and I'm building that number into the budget so that we know how that impacts the expense side of our budget and whether or not we have the revenues to cover that equation
Okay,
townwide.
to your point then you literally made my point. Then you're saying that the observation is these three people in the next budget year are the only three people that you're gonna budget this merit increase for?
No, that's actually adjustment to
This
the
year.
current
Yeah, well,
fiscal
this
year.
year. Well, that's what I'm saying.
If-
Well,
Yeah.
then what?
So, Jamie, when you keep referring to the number, are you talking the total 5%, 1.7 is what is in the budget, the overall budget, or not? Because that's the maximum amount of money that could be.
Yes, that's a maximum, because as you aggregate across this chart, it is inclusive.
So, just, I think everyone's getting a little confused.
They're
The
yeah.
greens
The green-
will happen this year.
Greens were
With
gonna
this
happen
budget,
this year, yeah.
This
Yeah,
budget.
the 2 to 5 in the last
And
two
then
columns are the
immediately
green.
upon that, more greens are gonna happen to those same people.
Okay, so
In
that's,
17.
well, then,
Yeah.
again, that's again.
And you
the
have that
question.
in
He's
your,
baking it into the
for
pie
example,
for the following year.
But see, where does that show?
Yeah, exactly.
The maximum numbers that that chart creates are plugged into the departmental budgets
So,
in each case.
so what page would show the 1.7?
It's broken up between all the departments. Each department on the individual pages has executive salaries and regular salaries, and so it's aggregated in the department budgets. The reason there is a separate chart that breaks it out, so you can see the individual players' positions and genesis of that calculation.
Well, the questions,
But it's been baked into the pie for 2017. In other words, you've given the merit raise to the clerk, 50, 68, and then that's baked into her fiscal year 2017, 70,151 salary. I mean, it's baked into your
from which you
projections.
budget 74,000.
And the same thing is, you know, for example, one employee's got nothing, and his zero is baked into the fiscal year 2017. Goes from, I'm just looking at one officer, John Giardino, goes fiscal year 66, 197, there's no increase, no nothing, but then that's baked into for next year for his 2% raise. I mean, it's all baked into the fiscal year 2017 numbers.
No, I hear you right on the money.
You are.
Right, well, that's got,
And, well, just for some clarification, again, on the collective bargaining side, there's a prescription for when those go up, and that's defined in the contract. There was several adjustments made to several of the folks on this list by contract under that scenario. In the case of the clerk, the evaluation indicator for the current year is based on the 6-month successful probation of that employee, and then at 1 year, which would be a regular regular evaluation, which would occur in the next fiscal year, that's reassessed, and then that's where it falls into the merit range for the coming fiscal year.
Also, for each of these departments, it would be very helpful to see salaries at a glance. In other words, the individuals, I think you may have done this in former, or we did it, or it's in our former. In other words, the individuals in that department and what their salary, what they got paid last year, 15 and 16 type of thing, what their salary range was. It's just easier for us to, at a glance, to see where salaries are going.
Would you like, how many years would you like to see on that?
Just two, really. But it's easier if you, I know it would be easier for you, Jamie, to do it as a single listing, but if you could do it by department, it's easier.
I certainly can. I can add that to the detail for each department.
okay. All right, so that's, any more questions on the town clerk? You're gonna break these numbers out for us?
Yes, I will give you detail on all line items that have a change in them. Or all line items if you prefer, but
Well, it's just,
think
I don't need,
heard the-
I mean, put it this way, if it's less, I can figure that out, but when you have, I mean, let's say, other contractual service, outsourced, 0.000%, 9,600, no nothing else, no explanation, obviously, we're gonna have to ask you that question, right?
Absolutely, and some of that is still in negotiation. As I mentioned earlier in our discussions, I'm meeting with,
I don't have a problem with that. My problem is just that, how about just making an asterisk here, in discussion with,
absolutely.
just so that we know it is. Again, I don't wanna ask you how you're spending my money, you need to tell me how you're spending my money.
Well, this is where Karen would put it in detail of personal services
Not
and
tell me,
capital
explain it
outlay.
to me, it's the worst word, explain it to me. I'm sorry, Rich.
No, I said what I had to say. There's a number of ways he could present it. I agree.
All right, let's move on to legal services. This is way out of control. We got rid of that guy.
I don't have it's the only page I don't have a problem with.
We got cut 50% almost, right? Yeah. I'm glad that we were way below the 209 that was a couple of years ago, and I think the 128 should be, barring some unforeseen lawsuit or something, we should be well within that.
As entertaining
page
as we
is
are, you
simple.
should pay us.
That's the reduction. There you have it, right there.
This page is an example of simplicity. It's pretty straightforward because it's a one-dimensional item. No offense,
No.
Glenn.
All right, so moving on to appointed boards expense.
Improvements, not buildings, for 1,000. Oh, I'm sorry, I was
Where are
looking,
you?
never mind, appointed boards. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
but it's appointed boards.
Appointed board, just page 9.
You know, just as an aside, we've been talking as a group during our weekly meetings about maybe, I just haven't had a chance to bring this up, hiring an in-house building official. And that's something that, are you still looking into that and what the cost would be associated with that? And, I mean, I know it's right during the budget
That's coming up.
process.
It's a different department budget here,
Yeah.
but.
It is, but it isn't, because what's gonna happen is, we may end up having more plans go to the planning and zoning, because now it's in-house to get it like some kind of tacit approval for homes that are, because we're seeing a lot of homes being built in Ocean Ridge that, you know, we have an outside company that looks at our building codes. However, they're an outside company, and we used to have Karen who really who knew what the intention of the town was, and she would look into that. So we may want to end up thinking about actually, if we do bring that in-house, having, when we have a house that's up for, comes in for permit, just having the go to planning and zoning to make sure that it's pretty much to what the town is looking to do here. You know, I know it's not like an architectural review committee, but basically something more general than that.
You mean hiring somebody or creating a board, Jeff?
No, I would keep it at planning and zoning as a board and use them. Why create another level of bureaucracy? But the hiring an in-house actual building official.
Oh,
Are you
okay,
talking
different story, yeah.
inspector? Does inspecting work as well?
Yeah, he would do everything.
And he would do what Karen used to do, which is to tell you, listen, you're gonna have a problem, I can see on this plan, you're gonna have a
So
problem
where's the
right
line
here.
item on the inspector?
Well, that's coming up, but I just want, at the boards, maybe something that we may end up looking at. I just wanted to kind of, because I've been
Just
thinking about it, I forgot to.
A note, we are thinking about that. We haven't formally approached going in that direction. We have a contract, for outside services there. Currently, your town staff, which includes myself and the clerk and our contract officials, agree to meet with permit applicants ahead of them submitting for that very purpose, to try to troubleshoot things that might be a problem in code or town standards or what have you, so that they don't expend a lot of time and money before they spend big bucks and
Time
all
and
the
money.
plans and drop them on us. We do that as a troubleshooting initiative. Granted, our former town clerk had institutional knowledge of decades and was very effective at that. We're supplementing that with multi-parties in-house, and as we get to the discussion of either, bringing some of that in-house as a official position or not, that would gravitate from the outside to the inside official basis.
Okay, well, I just
And
wanted to,
also to
while
the
I was looking
board,
at it.
The appointed boards, I think at the last commission meeting, there was discussion about looking at the land development regulations in our town code and using the P and Z to vet through some of that over time versus the compliance codes that the attorneys are going to address. And if that is to occur formally, we may have to look at either adjusting this particular budget for the appointed boards, or earmark it from the other budget where we currently budget all the planning and zoning material.
All right. Okay, let's move on to general government services expense.
That's where I had the $1,000, fourth from the bottom, Jamie, I'm sure it's nothing, improvement, not buildings, what did you have in mind there?
I put that in as just an incidental line item. As you can see, it has not been budgeted, and we have odds and ends that come up that just kind of fall out of conventional
Good enough.
description.
That's good enough for me.
All right, law enforcement and fire service expense.
One comment on that, I'll draw your attention to the very bottom line item, which is machinery and equipment, and you'll see there's a big jump up there percentage-wise. That's because that line item now includes the radio commitment that we pledged to the police department in I believe a 2-year amortized purchase program. So there are some numbers that have jumped up there in order to execute those purchases. Chief told me there may or may not be some savings potentially, depending on when and how we buy that equipment, but it's the explanation for why that line item has jumped up in simple terms. And then earlier I made the comments about under 504610, which is repairs and maintenance. And I made a note to myself that that line item, which is also a spike up in percentage, that's where we house a lot of what I was talking about, the legacy contracts and service contracts and software renewals and various things that occur on that side of the house that are coming up in rotation on a regular basis. I do have all the breakdown for the entire police department line items here, so if you need specifics on that, I can address that, or even the chief if you're interested.
Are traffic cameras in here?
They are, the only place traffic camera license plate recognition currently exists is on the capital 5-year plan, and it is not funded at this time, but it is listed at an estimated cost, I believe, of $225.
Okay, we'll get to it, it's all right,
Okay.
Jimmy, I was just wondering.
It's not shown in this department
Can I
budget.
keep going, Mayor?
Sure.
Let's start from the top, fourth from the top. One-time lump sum increase, $2,700. Where's that going?
I believe we have a senior member of the police department retiring soon into this new fiscal year, and that's earmarked for that.
And is that customary?
Yes, it's contractual
Okay,
and per
okay.
town policy.
Good. Life and health insurance is going up. That $22,000, we only got the increase to 527 had we stayed. That wasn't going to account for that, would it?
I'm sorry, say that.
Life and health insurance, 177, it's going up 10%.
These, categorically across all these departments, now that you have made a selection to exchange out for a new health insurance plan, I will repopulate all the health insurance numbers based on those actual quotes. The 110 that you see that's currently in those line items in most, I think it's in all.
I would repopulate and add a bit. You're not going to know who joins.
True.
By then.
True, we will.
Add a little bit of a fudge for, hopefully, we get greater participation in the health plan. Other contractual services, I assume that's fire? $1,058,000?
Yes.
Okay.
And that's the pending contract with Boynton Beach for fire rescue services, which
So
we
I have-
are estimated at a 4% increase, but that's still in legal land over there, getting some of the language tweaked between their attorneys and our attorneys and their administration.
That's all I had. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Anything else? All right, moving on to inspection services expense.
This is the department that houses the hybrid, the outsourced building services. You see, I show that as projecting our expense going up. This has a direct relation to the revenues going up, which I've bumped up significantly based on our actuarials in the town. We are significantly ahead of previous years on our building activity. And that, both here and in the engineering services later on a different department, because they have duties that are directly related to permits, those expenses go up because they're a cost for service metric.
So we're spending $154,000, projected to spend $154,000 for inspections. I
Well,
mean,
that's a good question.
157,005.
But is that the inspecting company, or there are other things lumped in under professional services?
Between that page 12 and page 14,
Could be 14, you add those two together.
there,
Right.
some of it goes to the building official and inspection services of one company, and some of it goes to the engineering firm for required reviews of plans and permits.
So, do you have an answer to the The company that does the inspecting of the buildings in
Mhm.
Ocean Ridge, is there a specific number right here? Because if you listen to what Jeff was asking, it would be a budget transfer item if we create this new position. So how much money are we currently spending on the outside?
We're currently budgeted for 140 on the outside under inspection services. We're year-to-date at about 111, and we're projecting for the coming fiscal year, the 154 there on that line item. I'm sorry, 110 to 154. In other words, we see that price going up, and that's inclusive of, with our contract with Hybrid, which is the building official, which is the main guy, the zoning official, and then the plans review components of that. And then on the other page is some of the engineering plans review.
Can we find an individual that wears all those hats?
I had one in
And
my
individual.
last city.
Is that right?
Yes, it's rare because the threshold for certifications and state licensing is high. You have to have all kinds of master categories to serve multiple functions in this area. But they are out there, and there are people looking, and you can see by the numbers that it's a very busy portion of the town's business, and you're gonna pay big bucks to get somebody in-house that has those credentials and does nothing but dedicated service for the town. But at the rate we're running, that might be a cost savings to the town, plus
Sounds it.
bring in
Sounds
in-house.
We'll also
control.
explain, you want to explain, though, the service we're getting from Hybrid is not every single day either.
Correct.
This isn't somebody here
Correct.
constantly. This person is here 2 to 3 days a week. That's it.
Yep.
Okay, so as the years, when we first did this, 14 years ago? Maybe 15 years ago? When we first switched over from the county to these guys, that contract sum was way under $100,000. Now it's 157, that's projected.
But a lot of
So-
that is volume. You've been growing
just-
exponentially.
So it may become actually something that we may want to look into.
Well, it's 154, and how much of the 169 in environmental is that person? That's what I'm trying to tease apart, and I'm not understanding. If we brought somebody in, they're covering that 154. Are they covering some portion of the environmental 168, Jamie? Page 14.
Yeah, because wouldn't you have in the, with that, you'd have in the lawn service too, would you not, environmental?
Yeah, that's all, we have all kinds of contracts under that line item. The town engineer is really the only place where it crosses over the building back to 12, because the town engineer has a contractual service for general engineering, and then they have a fee-based or a rate schedule for plans review and additional engineering that's related to the building department, so that number would adjust a little. The other contractual services you see under environmental would include like the 63,000 or 62,000 and change we spend for Clark mosquito spraying.
Mosquito.
Chris Wayne Associates that does all the landscaping on the major thoroughfares and those kinds of contracts. Aquagenics that sprays the detention area. Those kinds of things fall under that line item there.
Right, but the inspection service expense that's basically Hybrid's contract.
Yes, basically.
Okay, which is a lot of money.
And
Get
if,
somebody great.
if we hadn't mentioned it, when you give us those footnotes, if we hadn't mentioned other contractual services, please on those, let us know what they are.
Certainly, I'll give you a list of all those.
Okay, garbage and solid waste services, I see that one up somewhat. Not much.
That's, just a
3%.
note on that,
Not too
that
bad.
went up, the increase I put into that budget number is based on their notification to us, based on the CPI that is contractually in there. However, historically, we haven't expended quite that much, but because, for example, today, there's 4 or 5 tropical situations lined up in the Atlantic, that is budgeted higher than the actual contract number, just in case. And if it's unexpended, it comes back to the town.
Well, I have a question on that. Would we not, if we had, rather budget it in that, would we not just take that, during a hurricane, take out of our contingency fund? I mean, why would we budget a contract more to cover a hurricane, when in fact, that's the whole reason why we have a large fund balance anyway, that's, I mean, it's just a.
Historically, your town has always done that. In fact, most towns do that, and
Do
it's
they?
shown here that you've already been doing it that way. You budget a little higher than your contractual amount. But yes, you're correct that if there's a big incident or we're paying a kind of an emergency response to something, that would come by your appropriation out of contingency or some other area if it's a contract with a vendor. But
Okay.
in the case of solid waste
It's only
services.
$6,000 if a hurricane hits.
Yeah,
You
these
have
are
to pull out.
incidentals, these are the little things that, give a little wiggle room
That's not how a
around what
hurricane-
they're set at.
Okay.
Because that does fluctuate across this entire document.
Okay, thank you. Physical environment services expense.
Other contractual services, is spraying in there?
Yes, are you talking about mosquito and
Yes,
no-stim spraying?
yes.
Yes, to the tune of about 62,000 and change.
I'd like to see, I'd like that pointed out, number one, but number two, I'd like to get an idea of how much it would cost to kind of expand our spraying, because I've got a big concern over the Zika mosquito viruses issue. I looked at what the county is doing, the size of Palm Beach County. They have 4 teams of 2 people spraying for mosquitoes in Palm Beach County. That's all that they have budgeted for this year.
Shows how concerned we are with our citizens.
Exactly, but I think we need to show a little bit more concern for our citizens,
But s-
especially since we now have 4 cases, at least, that I've read about
Well,
in
there-
Palm Beach County.
Well, there is one problem with that, though, because there are islands that have opted out of the spraying. So how do you're gonna have to go back to them and say, look, we're coming on to this, it may be a health issue. Do you want us to spray in your neighborhoods? What if they say no?
Then if they say no, they say no, but I think it's something that we need to at least get an idea of how much it would cost to expand, because I think we ought to at least put it in the budget for maybe the next 2 or 3 years, because I think eventually we're going to have a serious problem if the state and the feds don't come up and step up to the plate and start covering the spraying and the coverage for the mosquitoes.
Just a brief commentary. We've already received the renewal recommendation from that company that provides those services, and they've given us an option for either or. We can either continue along the way we do it now, which is opt-in back tank-mounted fogging of your property, essentially, to opt-in properties, or for essentially the same cost. There's only a couple of $100 difference in the contractual price, so it's de minimis. They have another program that they're using in some places where they would reduce the number of back-mounted fogging on individual properties by about a third and augment that with truck-mounted fogging on a schedule, as well as a larvicide treatment to wet areas that potentially breed, the start of the cycle. As you probably well know, there are 2 schools of thought out there in the community. One is spray more, get rid of them, do whatever you have to do, and another school that is very concerned about airborne spraying and fogging and larvicides and all, even though the companies are, licensed and the chemicals are considered safe. And just finally, on the Zika issue, this is obviously not just an Ocean Ridge problem, but it is a county, state, and federal initiative. When I did go to Washington a few months ago for 2 days, it was all the talk in Washington about the gridlock, about the funding from the federal level down. So as you've seen on media coverages, the state is stepping up with some emergency funds, and their counties are doing various things. But obviously, we're taking their lead in terms of how to treat it. As far as our program that's in place today, I will bring forward in the renewal of the contract specifically, not to the budget because there's not a budget impact, but the style of delivery. Do you want to keep doing it the way we're doing it, or would you rather supplement that with fogging and larvicide, et cetera? And that's a decision you'll have to make, which way you want to go on that.
Well, we'd have to know the price, cost increase,
need
and
to
things of
get
that.
the-
But the other
It's
thing,
budget neutral,
Budget
Well,
either way there.
while we're on the subject, though, this is, again, other contractual services is just a number. That should be actually broken out to actually tell us what each one of those contractual services are. So we can actually have this discussion regarding Clark Mosquito, the lawn maintenance people, doing, I mean, by just lumping under one heading, you know, it's hard for us to see what exactly is in there. So if you could just break that out, because that's a big number.
I will run the detail on every line item so that you have
But
that
especially if
content.
it's
No,
different,
yeah.
if it's different contractors, that's the thing. If
Here's-
it's different,
You know, but I don't want to be inundated with every line item. I don't want the worksheets that you work off of. It should be pretty much common sense, and if not, go back to the previous budgets and look at them. Should be pretty much common sense that you don't need to give us detail of overtime, FICA taxes, retirement contributions, and like that. But when it comes to, you know, something like other contract services, even here, you've got other contract services, Republic. The only one where it's explained is the only one where it's self-explanatory. I know Karen
That's the
said that, I
attorney.
know Karen
That's the
said that. All right, right? So, I mean, it should be common sense what we need a breakdown of. Please don't give us, I don't
No,
want to see.
I
I
won't.
don't
breakdown of
minutia,
everything.
I'll just give you where explanation is.
Yeah.
Jamie, on a small tangent, when you said the trucks can come in and spray as a supplement, do you mean they will replace some of the backpacks with the trucks?
They currently, I believe, work on a schedule of weekly, so 52 times a year, do manual
Right.
fogging, spraying on individual properties. Under the new proposal, at the same cost, they would reduce that number essentially to bi-weekly or a little more than bi-weekly, and the offset of the cost of doing that manually, they would earmark towards a fogger truck like the county uses to go up and down
So
the
you
streets
can't
that
do a
I'm in.
hybrid. For instance,
We
let's say
used to use
Jim's
that.
It's a
neighborhood.
hybrid
Jim's
program.
neighborhood use a truck and the rest of the town uses
boy, did we get
spray.
flack
It would
when
be
we
a
had that truck
combination
going
of those,
through
but,
town.
you know, the politics
The
of
yellow
that,
light
or
going
if you're
on,
out there
and
having
foot going everywhere, the phone
In
was
other
ringing up
words,
the hooks.
you'd need
Jim
everybody
might
on
be
the street to agree.
Yeah, you really would, because, you know, in order for that program to be effective, you have to do it early in the morning or at dusk, you know, at the peak times when the mosquitoes are doing it. And if you're out there after dinner having your cocktail in the backyard and a
You
truck's
see that
coming
yellow
down
light
your
flashing.
street fogging because of the mosquito and no-see-um problem, I think you're gonna hear an earful about that, so.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I
We
mean,
have to weigh out, you know, what is the best science and what is politically palatable to your residents to address this
well,
problem.
I mean, I think we're still
cost is
a few
neutral.
months away from, you know, epidemic pandemonium kind of concern. So I think we have time to find out what the residents want or don't want. But I think it's something we ought to at least consider putting as a budget item. My understanding is CDC anticipates, if they get funded, a shot that will take care of the virus in a couple of years, development in 2 years. So it may be just 2 or 3 years funding for the additional spraying, but at least we need to, I think, we need to look at what that cost is going to be, get some input from our residents and figure out if they're willing to undergo that, you know, maybe a short-term kind of solution in light of the, I mean, devastating effects it has on a fetus, and it even has a bad effect on elderly people. It's just symptomatically, it's far worse than a regular virus infection. So, I mean, I think we at least need to look at that.
How much is the spraying currently, roughly?
62,000 and a few $100s.
So you wanna budget it up to 100,000 just in case?
I don't think that's a bad idea.
Well, could you, before the next, our next budget meeting, just find out what that cost would be? I'm sure that
Absolutely. In
Clark
fact,
would,
the
handy that number
representatives
pretty
would
quick.
come in and talk to you if you want to talk about your options in terms, not so much from the cost standpoint, but from the chemicals and the methodologies.
I think
Well,
that's
they've been in
important.
here.
I think that would be helpful to us, I really do. Find out if we can buy some of those skeeters from Australia that they're using to neuter the ones over
The
there.
mutant mosquitoes.
Yeah.
They've actually, there's
it
been
would
some
help.
positive press on that.
Oh,
about
there's gonna
the
be,
genetically.
that's gonna be the ultimate.
I hear they're making a new movie, Teenage Mutant Ninja Mosquitoes.
Just for quick reference, I just wanted to tell you that line item in particular includes the pest control, the landscape maintenance, the street sweeping for NPDES and the no-see mosquito control. That's what's in that collective line item.
I figured that, but it'd be nice to know, to see it.
I have all
With a-
those
with a
worksheets
number on it.
in my backup, so.
All right, so moving on to Public Works. Let's see. Any questions on Public Works? Wow.
Is this where, I didn't see this, is this where you plan to put the yearly upgrade for the road?
No, that
paving?
would be a capital.
That'd be capital projects.
Okay.
Well, the 1,500 to contingency, is that just,
That's a new line item. Again, I have put that in there for the little anomalies that we face on a regular basis that don't necessarily drop into a planned budgeted item. You know, just something breaks, something comes up, something is just an oddball out there.
well, where do we have it before?
It didn't exist.
Wouldn't that be under repair and maintenance? I mean, if something breaks, something needs to be fixed, that would be maintenance, and that would be
I
repair.
don't have a problem with naming it contingency.
But you already got repair and maintenance.
It's for unidentifiable
Look at the next
needs.
page. It's got a whole chart,
Well, that's a contingency.
expense.
I'm saying that, I'm just saying
Yeah,
contingency,
that's
but
its
what
own-
does that
that's
really
general
mean?
town contingency.
I mean,
its own department.
what is the, I'm just saying, I'm just gonna keep on adding line items of money that, if we already have it in here, what exactly does contingency mean?
That's a good point. That's a good point.
That's $1,500 earmarked for something that we have not anticipated.
Like what? Just give me an example. I'm Public Works, and there's something that breaks.
Generator out back needs repair? Is that what you're talking
That
about?
would
That's
be a
repairs and
cap-
maintenance.
That's
That-
repairs and
That's right.
maintenance.
Most of those things are easily definable.
That's what I'm saying, that this is not something, I mean, I'm not trying to make a big deal of this, but why add a line item when we already have,
Isn't there a contingency fund?
There is a contingency fund.
we have a contingency
townwide.
fund, so now we have a contingency in the Public Works. Again, I'm not trying to,
I agree. I agree.
it's just
You
an
want, I can eliminate it
unnecessary
or fold it
budget.
into repair and
Fold it
maintenance, or
into
put
the
it
repair and
into-
maintenance.
Okay.
Actually, it is subtracted from the next page. Take a look.
No, it isn't.
Yeah, it is.
No, it isn't.
That's, yeah.
That's our contingency account that we got,
But
that was
that's- no,
negative.
It's the same line item,
No, it's not.
same number.
No, this, but it's under a different
But see,
master
they call
number.
everything, he puts everything at 509 contingency.
The, on contingency expense, general fund, your contingency, as pointed out earlier, this is a good news. It's not going up by 8%. You've got it going down by 20%. It was not 37,000 last year. It is traditionally 50,000. And I think it has been for some time, Mayor, yes?
Yep.
So, and the reason, by the way, the reason that 13,000 occurred was because Karen, the reason why you wouldn't normally pick it up is that Karen would do the one-time adjustments at end-of-year closing after this comes out. She did that for you before she left. She discussed it with you guys, and she entered that. So you pick it up in the current computer system, but in fact, I think the operative document for you on all of these opening balances is a public record and not your computer system. It just makes more sense to me. So I think we need to increase that back to the 50,000 that we've traditionally held, at a minimum.
I'd agree with that. I mean, I think it's been that way for years. We've had a,
Instead of the 40 that's shown there, is that what you're referencing?
And I'd like to see, as long as we've got you doing a major rework of this, fix that 13,000 to make it apples to apples.
It was historically 50, is that what you said?
It was historically 50. 13 came out to pay Karen her lump sum payment. That's why you're picking up 37.
Correct.
But you should, but the beginning balance should be the beginning balance per last year's 2015 budget should be what is printed in this document. And that is the only, I did every single line item. That is the only
One that changed.
item that I found that was, and as an example, if we had done the same thing when we did the 2015 budget, the chief's budget would have been up $80,000.
Yeah, because all the,
Okay, because there was lump sum payment made. So you don't want to do that. You want to compare beginning of year to beginning of year period. Yeah?
Yes, you're correct, Commissioner. The numbers that I pulled for the budget came out of our accounting software, so if journal adjustments were made to that original budget number, it is reflected
Correct.
here.
Correct. And it shouldn't be.
so you're blaming the software?
No, I'm not blaming anything, just.
I know how he picked it up.
I picked it up.
Because there was a budget amendment that had to be done,
Uh-huh.
the updated budget, we just never put an updated budget on the website. And there's no reason why we should. Because the budget is a snapshot of our expectations for the year, right? And you should be comparing expectation to expectation to expectation.
Okay, speaking of that, how about the 5-year capital investment plan worksheet? Moving on to that.
Mayor, I think, and I'm going to give credit to former Mayor Khalil for reminding me of this. I think that we need to get back on a schedule of forced paving. Just do it, just bite the bullet and do it. I know that we've got it budgeted in, but we never seem to do it. What do we need to do to make that happen?
We can do it now in the money in capital projects for the first year, but you're gonna have to because you already have 100 and, I don't know what the total is there, but you have money in the capital budget currently, and if you said, start on the road paving project, for example, then there's money to pay for year 1, but there isn't money currently earmarked for year 2, 3, 4, et cetera. It really has to become a consensus direction from the commission to commit to that each year to spend that money to do that particular priority.
Do we want to try to budget, we're in good years now. Do we want to try to budget 150 for that, even though we're spending 100, so that we can build up a bit of a fund just for paving, so that we know that year after year after year, barring cataclysm, we are doing 1 mile or whatever of the town, and therefore every 16 years, the entire town is being done?
I think that's a good idea, but, I mean, how many of our roads are exactly 1 mile for $100,000? I mean, and you don't want to
Well, that's just
pave a road
calculation.
3
Well,
miles.
say it's 16
But,
miles,
yeah.
right?
But I mean, the point is, you don't want to pave a road halfway.
You're doing 3
in a
mile.
year and do-
Right.
Well,
Yeah, yeah.
you're exactly right. You have one island has more miles of roads than another
Yeah.
island, so.
So, I mean, I don't know how you gauge that on a yearly basis. Maybe we just budget 60 miles divided by 10 is 1.6 miles, you budget $160,000.
So Jamie, do you know the answer?
And then adjust it for each, road you decide to pave?
Is it 100,000 a mile if you do 1 mile? And if you do 3 miles, it goes down to
No, you don't get a
250?
cost savings, not on that scale and equipment. And $100,000 is a number I verified with our engineers. It is a good working number for a mile of pavement. There are, of course, variables in that, if you have, drainage issues or you have road
Why don't you do-
deterioration issues or things like
Why don't
that.
you do this, Jamie? Why don't you survey the worst roads that we have? Figure out how many miles need to be paved, how long that particular road is, and then just say, okay, we're gonna pave Adams this year. And then next year, we're going to, because that's the worst one, then next year, we're gonna pave this road.
Well,
So
hey,
then we can budget for each road that we anticipate
Well,
we'll need to
what
pave.
about just doing an RFP
That's,
and just, get a couple of companies rather than we do? We have 2 or 3 companies
Do it
go out
for
there.
us and put us on a plan.
And just, hey, design a plan, and this is what we want to do. We haven't paved our roads in 5 years at least.
that's the way we would have to handle it because of the size of the expense. We'd need to bid this out
Okay.
in a major sealed bid way. I'm currently talking to 2 paving companies about reconditioning and striping our parking lot and some other incidentals. But that's easily done as special project work. This would require a full-blown bid for the ongoing service.
I think that's a good idea.
And get us back on a schedule, and they manage the entire thing, we just need to come up with the money. As simple as that. And I'm wondering if we shouldn't create a separate capital fund for payment, for paving, an ongoing capital fund for paving? Does it gain us anything to do that?
Not really. You do have a separate capital fund. You only have two major funds in the town, the general fund and the capital funds. And within the capital fund, you can earmark by GL code any particular line item you.
How much is being earmarked for 2017, 16, 17?
For our current year,
Uh-huh.
there's nothing.
No, for
well, there's
next year,
100
for the
oh,
current budget, this budget I'm looking at, how much is?
On the capital 5-year plan, I'm estimating that we would want to put $100,000 a year into that project. You have 180,000 plus sitting in that capital fund. But we'd have to start committing and transferring money into that fund to keep it ongoing.
Yeah, I'm lost now. Now I'm lost. I'm looking at page 17.
Page 17.
Okay.
I have under second gray bar there, it says Public Works, 5-year capital outlay plan, annualized road repair and paving,
Okay.
$100,000 per year.
But that's low.
But this is
by-
unfunded.
It's low by a bunch, because if you have 16 miles of roads, 5 years, you gotta do 3 miles a year.
Oh, but
Well,
you
yeah,
shouldn't
we
be
would have to change
repaving
that
every
number.
5 years, would you?
Well, you're repaying, what happens, this is the way we've always done it, except for when we had a downturn. Every 5 years, the first one, it was the first of the roads, the 6th year, they would be the first again.
Oh, every
Yeah,
5 years you're repaving?
we were doing it every 5 years, were we not, Gail?
I don't believe so. I know mine.
I thought it was every
Five
10
or
years.
seven.
I can't
No,
believe,
only
I
10.
can't believe you'd be repaving every 5 years.
No, I think it was gonna be 5 or 10 years, we were
I
doing.
thought it was 10
repaving.
years, but
10
But
would
even
be.
so, 10
it's still-
years.
yeah.
I mean, you're gonna be at 10 years,
You're
you're
still
gonna
doing
do
2 miles of
100,000.
road. Yeah, you're still doing a couple miles of
So,
road.
look, we need to change this to 200,000, certainly,
Absolutely.
okay? Because we've got to get this done. It doesn't get cheaper over time, it gets more expensive.
And to support that, Commissioner, you'll have to transfer into capital funds enough to cover that each year.
Agreed.
Plus whatever else.
And I understand that, but we ought to put it in the budget at 200,000. Then what
Okay.
we have to do is we wind up making a motion to transfer, correct? Actually, when we pass the budget, we make that motion. But I would say change that to 200,000.
Almost positive, my road in 20-something years I've been here has been paved 3 times, because I've had to change my driveway height 3 times.
Well, that's because you're
So,
bigger.
that's, basically every 7 years, something like that. So anyway,
It was a periodic
the
schedule.
RFP would be the key, so that we can know exactly what the cost is gonna be, because you're gonna end up, how you're gonna end up doing it is like we've done island per island per island, and then we did the south end, street. So,
And of course, if you chose to pave, say, North Old Ocean, which is a much longer stretch, the cost to do the whole thing at once would be
Right.
more costly than a particular year of
well, that would
a
be,
couple smaller segments.
that would be part of A, B, C, D, whatever, how we would plan it out. Going with the
And
ones
back
that
to your
are,
earlier point, I forget who brought it up, but in the RFP, if we ask our paving companies to project a schedule and plan
Mm-hmm.
based on need and length
right, they
and
would have to
pavement.
evaluate all the town's roads, the RFP would be evaluate the town's roads, list an order of need, and then what is the cost to repave over a 5-year plan? or
Right, and
7
as you go down that list, those numbers will be different based on
Oh, absolutely.
the length and
lengths of the roads.
work needed for each segment.
Because if you're gonna inconvenience people, you don't wanna do like half of,
You can't do half of it.
you can't do
No,
one
you
half
have
of
to do
the
full
Harbor
segments.
Drive, and then come back 2 years later to the other half, you might as well do Harbor Drive south, north and south, or do all the other roads and do it that way. So anyway, we're good on that?
What is this, 70,000, I got a feeling this is gonna pertain to you and something you're looking at, Chief, because I think we've talked about that, or is it Tracy? 70,000 for media audio upgrade for commission chambers. That's,
We're having concerts in
it
here
is.
to supplement the budget.
oh my God.
We're gonna
You
make
must
it a
feel just
recording
like Colin
studio.
Powell. She
They-
pointed
they-
right at you.
Yeah, they debate who's gonna own that.
In Ocean Ridge, if you touch it, you own it. I own it. We're talking about the audio and visual equipment in here, and the fact that most of the stuff in the back room is now getting to be 8 to 10 years old is an end of life. You haven't been satisfied with the quality of recordings, nor have I, nor the amount of time spent in fixing things before a commission meeting to make our government work right. It's time to look at upgrading that system in here. That's a rough estimate only, depending upon what you chose to do.
Hardware will still work. Hardware is still gonna work. Wiring's still gonna work. What you're gonna wind up replacing is your tape recording, equipment, your video projection, certainly.
Video projection and audio recording equipment. The estimate to replace the audio recording equipment that we had came in originally, if you'll recall, when the Crestron system originally went down, at $23,000.
Okay.
This is an estimate, merely an estimate. I would need to know from you what you would like. This is the bottom line. What would you like to see on the walls, and how would you like to be able to access the system? There are different systems that we can put in. Yes, this microphone will work. Will it connect to something new? I don't know.
Oh, I
Do
do.
we want-
Yes, it will.
Do we want to record the whole room, directional microphones, ceiling-wise, that automatically vote for each other, so that we're not talking over each other, so that we're not having the issues? If we wanted to raise the volume in this room now, by the time I raise it, if you move your microphone up 1 inch, you get feedback because of the positioning of speakers. We've tweaked that in the 10 and a half years I've been here, since we moved into this building, probably 10 and a half times. I have a piece of equipment in there now, which is causing problems, and it's not one of our new pieces. It will cost about $10,000 to
In there,
replace it.
in where?
In the back room.
Okay.
Where there's a cabinet that has
Okay.
all kinds of
Are you talking
processors.
capturing meetings in this room
Yes, sir,
for $23,000?
and
That's what
projecting,
it-
and projecting stuff
And also
on,
projecting
and
for
projecting things up on
presentation.
the screens, and
That just sounds nuts.
I agree. I agree 100%. It
Sounds
sounds
high to you,
absolutely nuts.
Steve?
Yeah.
Okay?
That's what
We
I'm saying. I'm
spent-
saying 70,000 seems,
We
now
spent,
certainly up here, what you're looking at is not
Antiquated.
projection. You're not looking for projection, you're looking for monitor style. It may be 4 monitors approximately that size. You see what I'm saying? Edgeless monitors onto which she's projecting, but not through, you can take that home.
we'll
the-
take that for our mobile presentations as long as it works. My point to this is,
Well, basically a
like it's
computer
audio
screen,
capture.
basically a high definition
My-
computer screen is what you're talking about, because they can't really see this back there. It's an opaque projector, for God's sake.
Mary Kate, you see
Can you see it? What's up here?
You notice the,
the
Not your glasses?
stuff that we have in place right now is
it'd
old
be neat to put
equipment.
actually
It's old
monitors
technology.
up like over here, and
I think
folks
that
could
you
actually
could-
see and we're closer.
I think that based upon what the commission has
But
put
70
out
Gs, wow.
This
regularly,
is not expensive stuff. These monitors are not expensive stuff.
I think that what the commission has put out regularly is their desire is to have much better audiovisual equipment in here, especially for presentations at meetings. I think that that's a very good thing to do, because we use this for training, we use this for public events, we use it for all kinds of things. It's a multi-purpose area. The reason that I throw 70,000 out there is that you spent $140,000, or actually in excess of that, to put this equipment in 8 years ago. I think that we can do it for a lot less, but I'm not an expert. We would have to get some proposals together. I just want to float that number for you based upon what I've been encountering as we're replacing things that break.
Okay. Well, you want to leave it in there? Do you want to reduce it? What's the pleasure of the commission?
I would just remind you that the items on this list, in this column, are essentially unfunded at this time.
Right, none of
So if you
this-
want to wait on that decision until you have actual bids or proposals in front of you, because it could be less, or it could be something different if we pursued other options, you certainly are at liberty to do that, but I think this is the first time we're including a 5-year capital plan worksheet to look at these issues and amortize the costs of some legacy equipment and projects that need to occur in the near future, because everything in this building is aging at the same, people excluded, of course, is aging at the same rate because it was all put in pretty much with the building, and here we are X number of years later. Are we at 8 years at the building, Chief? Or all of you at 8 years? 08 was when it was.
Leave it in, it's unfunded, let's talk about
Just
what we
leave
can
it, let's
fund.
leave it. I mean, this whole page is unfunded. so-
Well, let me ask you, we do need
What's
to
the
talk
difference?
about,
Leave
is it
it in or
at
don't
this
leave it in?
time of year that we talk about what we're gonna fund and what we're not gonna fund?
Certainly, I need to know that to plug in your final budget.
Okay.
Yes.
The, where were we, Jamie, what was the plug number between, revenues and expenses, difference between revenue and expenses, was it?
That's shown,
Roughly.
286, 650?
286, okay.
286, 650. Then we had 275, 942 in the cap reserves.
We currently have, okay, so 286, you're looking here, if we did everything at 300, 417, 409, 7, you're looking at about $420,000, $425,000 for everything. And 525 if you increase in the road to 200,000. I don't know, I don't even know where you start.
well, you have
But I think we should,
fixed amounts of money in your capital fund, which is for this purpose, and then you have assets in the town, which are contingency and savings and all kinds of things that you can opt or not to access if something's important to fund, or you can start on an annualized basis and/or any of these options, putting a dedicated amount of money into capital projects funding, and then executing the projects against that fund.
Well, I think that you can go down it, Mayor, as, reconnects covert cameras for investigations, $2,500. It's not gonna kill us. The, alarm receiver, redundant alarm receiver, I think that we owe that to, Hal's Ajita for having to come in to fix the receiver every time he has to come in. It's $2,550. Tasers, I mean, oh, God, gee, 26 grand for tasers, body cameras with them?
If you'd like to go down the body camera road, certainly.
No, I'd like not to go down the taser road.
That's your decision. This is a, for lack of better,
Wish list.
wish list.
You keep
Yeah.
wishing. Back to you, Mayor.
okay, so,
I got a question on revenue. Where are we with Briny Breezes? Where are we with Briny Breezes?
Briny Breezes, as I'll give you the brief snapshot, and I'll also allow the chief to chime in since he actually represented us at the most recent meeting down there. But as you recall, we had put an executable contract together for Briny Breezes. We had projected our current contract of $213 and change plus 4% for our growth in the budget and police department. We put that information into Briny Breezes. Actually, we brought it back to you first because I believe you all wanted to see the justification for that number. You ratified that contract last month, I believe it was, and we sent that to Briny Breezes. In the interim, Briny Breezes also sought and received a competitive bid from the city of Boynton Beach at a number approximately 21,000 less than us.
Did they seek it, or was it unsolicited?
I can't verify.
I believe it was unsolicited.
yeah, it was a letter of intent.
They did not, yes, they received a letter of intent from the city of Boynton Beach claiming all the services they provide at a fixed number that was about $21,000 less than our quote. The chief represented us at the most recent town meeting, which they moved up a week in Briny Breezes last week, and representatives of the city of Boynton Beach were at that meeting and presented their projected service and terms. in a letter of intent. They have not presented a executable contract at this time. As far as, I believe the direction at Briny Breezes was to send the Boynton Beach back to turn that letter of intent into an executable contract or an interlocal agreement, and then they would weigh ours versus theirs. Their meeting, I believe, September 8th.
September 8th.
Okay, so we have no decision yet, correct?
We do not have a decision. from
But
them
now we
yet.
budgeted that income, have we not?
Yes, we have.
So what's the plan if they decide to go with Boynton Beach as opposed to us? What's the plan to recapture that income? From
I will have to
what
go,
source?
I will have to go through the entire budget.
No
and-
recapture.
Well, we can,
Just taking it out of the
well,
budget.
I mean, the point is, we're stuck at the millage and we can't.
Well,
raise the
we've
millage
got to,
anymore.
it's not even a question of recapturing the income, because we always wind up with a surplus, and we do have almost $5 million, most of which is available to us. But I think that what's more important, personally, I think that Briny knows the deal with Boynton. They know what they're going to get with Boynton. They know what they're getting with us. I think they know that this contract is important to us, but they're getting a good deal. Chief tells me they've got 2 out of his 12 districts are Briny Breezes. That's 1/6 of our resources are going to Briny, yet even at the increase, we're charging them less than 1/10 of our police budget. Good deal for them, good deal for us, he represented us well. They know they're important to us.
Just asking the question.
No, but, and that's a but. We need to remember that as a town, if we have to depend on mercenary services, that can, with 60-day contract outs to survive as a town, we've got a real problem, a much bigger problem with our budget than that. So we just need to take it as it comes. We may have to tighten our belts. If they leave, they'll be back.
Okay, Chief, you want to add anything to that?
There was a presentation by the city of Boynton Beach. There was the presentation by me. We made sure that they were aware that they had a fully ratified executable contract in their possession from us, which they asked for, and that Boynton had not provided that. Excuse me. The only thing that came out of that meeting to bring back to you was whether we would consider changing our price, and if we were willing to do that, to bring our last and final offer on September the 8th, so they could make a decision. And they directed Boynton Beach to bring a contract to the likes of ours that outlines the services that they are willing to provide. That's their decision point at this point in time. After the meeting, I was asked about how we came to our funding. I explained that to the person that asked me, and explained to them that, in effect, we are giving them a 46% relationship discount. And that we value our relationship, and that our views and that our feelings about development and infrastructure and safety and security for our residents on the barrier island are the same as theirs, and that unfortunately Boynton Beach is 58 times larger and has differing views, and that's very obvious based upon meetings that they went to. I made sure to point that out. If the commission would like me to present something other than what we have, I'll be more than happy to. If you would like me to maintain that we provide a style and quality and level of service that exceeds that of what can be provided by other local providers, I'm willing to do that too, because I believe that.
Can a recast of that contract, that can't be done in a shade meeting, it has to be done in a public meeting, yes, Glenn?
Correct.
When is our meeting?
It is unfortunate that our meeting is after their
September
meeting.
12th.
Labor Day.
And can that topic be
There-
taken up in this meeting? A topic of where we are right now, Glenn?
Well, this
This is a special meeting.
is a
by
special meeting.
But it's
advertisement.
But can we-
advertised, and I
Yes.
asked the question again, yes or no?
You can certainly add to the agenda this topic and discuss it, and then you could give the chief direction, but I wouldn't suggest you'd sign a new contract today. You could put that on your next agenda, but you could, if you want to negotiate
Because I
further, you
do
can
have
give
a
him direction.
suggestion, Mayor.
Yes.
If I may. What I would do with the city of Boynton is represent yourself exactly as you have. They matter to us. It's a great relationship discount for them, a very, very good deal for us. We want to keep it that way. They don't want Boynton in there handling this. And if they want a better deal, I would individually be willing to tell them, listen, we'll keep the 2016 rate the same for 2017. You give us a 5-year contract with 4% annual increases starting on the second year, and you still have a 60-day out. That's what I would suggest.
4%, 4 times 221, so where's it back around 200 would be at?
Yes, it was,
It's actually-
we only gave them, I think, a $7,000 increase. It was
It
something
was
like that.
213.
It was
It went
$213.
to 221.
So, keep it the exact same as it is. Guarantee them, starting year 2, 4% increase per year, but they have to give us a 5-year commitment. Now, they have a 60-day out on that contract, on that current contract, as I read it, correct?
My understanding is that both sides can opt out with written notice within 60 days.
In good faith, I'd even tell them, listen, if you really want to play that game, take a set fee for a year and then cancel the contract and try to play it again, do it. But that's not our relationship with Bryony. It's not our relationship is too good.
My question, if I may, to the attorneys is, can we offer a 5-year contract in this particular case? It's traditionally been 3 since I've been here. I didn't know if there was any
You
legalities.
can,
regarding
again, if
that.
you're going to take some action, I'd say just make a motion to add this to the agenda.
Okay, I'd like
What
to
are-
make a motion to add the Bryony contract to the agenda.
Second that. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Okay.
And now that you've added it to the agenda, make a motion as to what you want the chief to do. And I would suggest you ratify that motion at your September meeting, just to put belt and suspenders on it. But I think that you're in good shape, because you have a publicly noticed meeting. You've got, as any publicly noticed meeting, you can always add things to an agenda.
Then I will make a motion that we authorize the chief to go back to Bryony at the appropriate time and explain to them that we'll give them 2 choices. One, the contract that we've already offered, which is a short-term contract, and one, a 5-year, and the alternative being a 5-year contract with no increase for the 2016-17 fiscal year. It'll be the same as 15-16, and then 4% increases starting from year 2 through year 5, and they continue to have the same contract cancellation clauses as currently in the contract.
All the contract terms will be the same.
All contract terms will be the same, but that.
Second.
Accept that as a motion?
There's a second.
That's the motion.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
I will deliver the message on September the 8th.
Thank you. Good job, everyone. I guess we'll see you again at our next meeting. Thanks, everybody. Meeting adjourned.